was actually needed in the current circumstances and the chaos that we have right now. She would have been the saner voice. I also personally miss her sorely. Uh, the panelists will be speaking about the facts and will perhaps allude to the intergovernmental panel on climate change reports that have come out of the United Nations and many such reports. But I will here only talk about the little contribution that I have been making for the past more than 3 years now. This is mostly confined to Lahore, but it's gradually being expanded to the entire province. But firstly, two aphorisms. One by Jonathan Miller, who said that you're not responsible for the past, but insofar as you can do nothing, you are complicit in the present created by it. So we need to do something, otherwise we'll be complicit in the present that we create and the future that beckons us. Our constitution is a social compact between the state and the people. It contains rights which the state is under obligation to enforce, and a failure to do so spawns right-based environmental litigation. We may refer to the various provisions in the constitution which give rise to such rights to inhere in the people of Pakistan, and for which the state is obligated to take real and immediate measures so that climate crisis can be averted in all its manifestations. I can refer to Article 3 of the Constitution, which requires the state to ensure elimination of all forms of exploitation and the gradual fulfillment of the fundamental principle, that is, from each according to his ability to each according to his work. There's a plethora of precedents which have given an expansive view of the term life as used in Article 9 of the Constitution, which clearly includes life which is free from hazards caused by the environmental pollution in order to nurture healthy and robust life for the people of Pakistan. Article 38 is one of the principles of policy which inter alia obligates the state to secure the well-being of the people, to provide basic necessities of life, such as food, clothing, etc. But I will be, as I said in the beginning, talking about an aspect which is now called climate justice. And this has been going on in a number of countries. It is also a recent phenomenon in Pakistan, but you can find more about this in an Asian Development Bank booklet. They have compiled a report series of 4 reports where they have encompassed the various climate litigations taking place in Asia, and where the courts have taken charge of certain issues where the people have been denied their rights to climate change because of climate change. We have so many judgments which have been passed and which I would say lay down or refer to certain treaties, conventions, international conventions, but they do nothing more. They are just judgments. I would say they are like paintings to be looked at and nothing more. When we embarked upon this litigation in 2019, we thought that something more must be done. We've had judgments which are to be looked at, but we need some action now. We cannot just sit idly, render judgments and like consultants' reports and then do nothing about it. And this is a phenomena which I will tell you briefly, which is now going on throughout the world. It has been variously defined. For example, it is defined as engagement orders in Canada and New Zealand, judicial directives in South Africa and Indian Supreme Courts, supervisory jurisdictions, which means that report back to the court. I would call the action that we have taken as judicial review in action. This is entitled Haroon Farooq versus Government of Punjab. It was initiated in 2018. It was brought by a public-spirited individual as a social action petition. And so I seized the opportunity of not, deciding something, disposing of the petition, but keeping it pending, issuing directions to the government to report back to the court. And we have made significant strides. Not many people perhaps know about this, but the work which is being carried out on the ground is enormous, and I'll just tell you briefly about it. In order to address the adverse impacts associated with global warming, a key goal of climate justice is to put across the effects of mitigation and adaptation in order to promote greater climate equity. A large number of judicial directions in this case relate to mitigation and adaptation measures, particularly those aimed at water conservation. Climate change engenders adaptation needs, which in turn feeds adaptation policies and options, which can reduce risks to natural ecosystems by its restoration to health, livelihoods, food and water, with efficient irrigation, green infrastructure, sustainable land use and water management. Thus, the twin themes of mitigation and adaptation have to be at the heart of any climate litigation. So judicial directives were issued on which executives were required to report back to the court. In order to achieve this and to represent this court on the ground, a water commission was set up. I'll introduce the members of the commission who are present here today. They are at the vanguard of this entire thing that we have. So a water commission was set up. The singular object was the attainment of water justice in motion. Since its establishment, the Water Commission, which was later designated as the Water and Environment Commission, has compiled over 100 reports, which form part of the record. The function of the commission has been unique and takes a paradigm shift from the previously appointed commissions. This court, I, sitting as the court, issue directions on those reports. And I'll now take you quickly, because there's paucity of time. I cannot, delve into a broader scheme of what we have in the litigation, but I'll just briefly take you through the steps which have been achieved on the ground. Firstly, the Commission ensured the installation of 73 large and medium-scale treatment plants at Sundar Industrial Estate, which is the biggest in Punjab. They had no treatment plants. The entire effluents were being, through the pit hole, they were being injected into the, in the ground, and they were being mixed with the groundwater. So 73 large and medium treatment plants have been ensured, they have been set up, and the rest are in the pipeline. The Sundar Industrial Estate did not have a treatment plant. So we have compelled the Sundar Industrial Estate to have a treatment plant of its own, which is right now under construction. Likewise, the sugar industry. Action was taken against the sugar industry. There are about 15 sugar mills in the Punjab. 4 out of those sugar mills have already installed treatment plants. The others are in the process of installing those treatment plants. And imagine the benefit that the population around them will be getting out of, because previously their entire effluent, which was consisting of arsenic, etc., was being injected into the underground. So the underground water was being polluted, and you can imagine what was the impact that it was creating on the people living in those areas. I think a suggestion was made that a lot of water is being wasted in the mosques while, in the process of ablution. So we embarked upon the construction of ablution tanks. This is also a new concept. Currently, 193 ablution tanks have been constructed in different mosques in Lahore. The biggest one has been constructed in Data Darbar Mosque. I would invite any of you to go there and have a look. What happens is that the Parks and Horticulture Authority, the lorries, they come there, they fill their tanks with their water, and the entire, you see, this Iqbal Park, which was the Minto Park, is now being irrigated by the water which they take from the ablution tank of Dada Darbar. 310 car washing cycling plants have been installed in the these you must have seen the car washing, for the purpose of car washing, because the water was being wasted while the cars were being washed. The entire water was being wasted. Now they have car washing recycling plants, which means that the water is not being wasted and the same water is being recycled. Then the tube wells were being used to use the underground water. The channels from the canal were at least 24 channels. They are irrigation channels. They were all closed. We have had 17 out of those 24 irrigation channels of Lahore branch canal, which remained choked for the past 35 years. They are now been opened. The irrigation department has compelled to do that. And the tube wells in the Governor House, the HSN College, in the Lawrence Garden, they've all been shut down. Now the water from the canals are being used to irrigate their lands. This is also one of the most significant steps that have been taken. The housing societies were not paying any aquifer charges, and VASA was completely helpless in doing that. Through the intervention of the courts, the housing societies have been compelled to pay the aquifer charges, and VASA has been richer by about 2 billion rupees. And those housing societies will now be, in fact, this is another step. For the first time in Lahore, water meters will be installed throughout Lahore, because strangely, we don't have water meters. So for residential purposes, commercial purposes, housing societies, they don't pay anything for the use of water, which is, in my opinion, criminal under these circumstances. So water meters will be installed. The work will commence from December, and people will be compelled to pay for the water that they are using. Then there are steps taken for rainwater harvesting. Two projects have been steered. If you notice this monsoon, it was always the case in monsoons that around Lawrence and in this Mall Road, wherever it rained, there was a lot of water used to accumulate. We've had constructed a water tank, a huge water tank, under the Lawrence Garden, and this monsoon you must have noticed that there was no water accumulation, because all of that water goes and gets stored in those water tanks. They are taken out, and the entire Lawrence Garden is being irrigated by the water. At least 3 other water tanks are being constructed in and around Lahore. As a result of these steps which were taken by the court, a report was compiled about a year back by the Directorate of Hydrology, VASA. And in that report, it was a pleasantly surprising report for us. It was reported that the water level was lastly 50.150 meters in 2018. Since the initiation of these steps, the water till 2020 the level has not gone down, which means that there has been no further depletion of groundwater in Lahore. And, since 2020, the water table has significantly come up. So that is, I think, one of the significant achievements of this climate litigation that I'm just talking about. 27.125 cusics, which is amounting to 1,75 lakhs gallons of groundwater per day, is being saved because of these measures, much more in cantonment as well. The second initiation was regarding environment and smog. You must have noticed last December, because of the measures put in by this court, we had, at the end of December, at least 2 weeks of sunshine in Lahore, which we never experienced. That was because of, not many people know, the steps taken by this court regarding smog. Previously, these brick kilns, they are scattered all over Punjab. They were being operated on the old technology. Because of the orders of this court, all of them had converted to zigzag technology. You must now, traveling on these roads, motorways, you must have noticed white smoke coming out of these brick kilns. That is because of the new technology now that has been installed because of the orders and directions of this court. This was a concerted effort over a period of 2.5 years. Many other steps are taken. I hold a weekly meeting on Fridays, and directions are issued regularly on many subjects which I cannot encompass in this short time that I have. But stubble burning is also one of the key elements which contributes to smog in Pakistan. It is a recent phenomenon. It has been exacerbated by the other climate elements brought forth by the climate change. You know that stubble burning takes place during this season throughout Punjab. The Chief Secretary has been asked to hold weekly meetings. The Deputy Commissioners have been sensitized. These stubble burnings are, we make use of the NASA satellite imageries as well as the imageries from other, and we have real-time, our commission has real-time knowledge of where the stubble burning is taking place so that we can take action. And you will notice a significant reduction in the smog because the stubble burning has been controlled. Anyone indulging in stubble burning is now being imposed with a fine of 200,000 rupees. Another significant step, and people living in Lahore must have noticed that there is significant reduction in the use of plastic bags. That was also one of the directions issued by this court. At least the large stores and many stores, pharmaceuticals and others, they have disused plastic bags. And you would notice other bags which are more environmentally friendly, paper bags. This was also one of the directions issued by this court, and we are expanding it to the other districts of Punjab. I would, lastly, wrapping, as I said, there's so much other things that are happening, and this, I say, is the small little contribution that I'm trying to make to bring about, meaningful changes. We all can, wherever we are, people can make that change. But I would lastly refer to 2 steps further that we've taken. Heat. To control heat, we've asked LDA to impose restrictions. They have compiled regulations as well. Rooftop gardening and solar paneling. That is what is being done throughout Lahore, which will control significantly the heat, because heat now is one of the major factors which will have an impact on cities because of the urbanization and the infrastructure development that we have. Lastly, I'll refer to the Ruda case. It's famously called the Ruda case. There's an urban development that the government wants to set up at the bed where Ravi no more flows. And in that judgment, I've held 2 things, amongst others. One, that our national security now is nothing else but food security. So food security is the new name of national security. So please stop acquiring agricultural land. So I have also in that judgment struck down the old colonial law of acquisition, where there was, the acquisition of agricultural land was rampant for, setting up infrastructure projects and housing societies. And I have held in that judgment that we cannot acquire agricultural land, and I've struck down the relevant provisions. That judgment is before the Supreme Court now. Let's hope the Supreme Court agrees with that judgment for the sake of the future of this country and our people. Because we need to stop acquiring agricultural land and setting up all those housing societies. Lastly, I would like to introduce the members of the Commission, Hina, Hafizullah and Kamal, who are sitting there. They are at the vanguard of this campaign, and they are members of the Commission. And I tell you, they have faced life threats because of the actions that they have taken on the direction of this court. They are doing great work, and I give them a hand up. Big hand, please. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Justice Shahid Karim. That was so inspiring. I'm a journalist, and I had no idea all these interventions are taking place in Lahore. I mean, this is the kind of story the media should be covering, really, and I think if you could join, okay, good, you joined the panel. So let's move on. My first question is to Khabar Mumtaz, the former Vice President of the IUCN. What lessons did we learn from the super floods of 2010? Because remember, we had massive flooding in the country about 12 years ago in 2010. And who gets left behind by these natural catastrophes despite getting impacted the most adversely? आपका ऑन कर दीजिए. Can't hear you. इनका ले.
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया रायना, और बहुत मैं शुक्रगुजार हूँ इस वक्त इस फोरम की कि उन्होंने एनवायरनमेंट को और क्लाइमेट चेंज को नेशनल डिस्कोर्स का हिस्सा बनाया है। और मेरा अपना ख्याल है कि ये एक बहुत बड़ा ह्यूमन राइट्स इशू है जिसको कि अब उसकी सही जगह मिलनी चाहिए। So before I start, I would like to pay tribute to Asma, a fellow traveler, a champion of human rights, women's rights, a very close friend who fearless, courageous, and who upheld her principles under all conditions. And I also would like to thank the organizers for this panel and for inviting me. We've heard enough of and a lot of information exists about the scale of this havoc. And there was a precursor in 2010 and 11. 2010 का जो था, it was a riverine flood, but 2011 का जो सिंध में flood था, वो बारिशों की ही वजह से था। उसमें हमने बहुत सारी चीज़ें देखी जो कि हमें जो कि फॉल्ट लाइंस आइडेंटिफाई की थी, जो कि हमें तैयारियों के लिए ज़रूरी है। दो चीज़ें जो उसमें थी और जो कि इस फ्लड में भी हमारे सामने आई हैं, वो यही हैं कि कुछ लोग ऐसे होते हैं जो कि रह जाते हैं जब फ्लड की रिलीफ होती है या रिहैबिलिटेशन होती है। So I think what we've learned, and I think again we've seen in this flood also, that there are those who are left behind. And we find that those are the people, the ones who are left behind are the ones who are vulnerable already. They have pre-existing vulnerabilities which get heightened and exacerbated during such catastrophes. We've seen, for instance, in the areas which have been affected by flood, the 16% of the population was already food insecure. And we also saw that 10% of the households from the previous flood of 2011 have not come out of absolute poverty. They did not succeed in coming out of absolute poverty. So unless we look at ameliorating the pre-existing conditions, we will continue to have people who are devastated by these floods, by these calamities. We already know that 33 million people are displaced, but within these left out people on the margins, the haris, the landless, the daily wagers, the women who are left behind are the ones that really get no attention. And in this particular flood of 2020, to 57% of the fatalities were of women and children. 57% were of the children, and then we find that there are, the most vulnerable are pregnant women, which also reflects upon the lack of family planning, population welfare facilities to women, because most of these are undernourished or malnourished and bad health. So these women, of these 650,000 pregnant women, 130,000 are at risk. That is, they are due to deliver within the next 3 months. There is no antenatal facility. They will probably be birthing, delivering at home. Their homes are gone, and we don't see any. But I mean, apparently now some attention is being given to it. But when we are looking at a flood or a devastation, I think we also have to look at what preparations we have done. And I think from the flood of 2010 and 11 to the floods of 2022, we find that preparedness was missing, has been missing. When we are talking about being prepared, there has to be an early warning system, and I'm not sure what early warning system exists in place. There have to be safe places for evacuation with backup of health and food, minimum food supplies. We don't see any signs of it. And while relief there's been response to the relief, we find the agencies responsible for responding mobilized with delay. It was the NGOs, the non-profit organizations who were linked to the grassroots, who came out first to come forward for relief, and उनके दायराकार बहुत लिमिटेड होते हैं. हर जो नॉन प्रॉफिट है उसका अपना दायराकार है, वो उस तक, और वहाँ पर लोग मुनज़्ज़म भी हैं, और जब तक लोग मुनज़्ज़म लोकल लेवल पे नहीं होते हैं तो आपकी रिलीफ जो है उन लोगों तक नहीं पहुँचती जिनको की ज़रूरत है. तो we find that again and again it's the not-for-profit, the NGOs who took the lead. The government has followed later. Army was called in and deployed as much as they could. All the helicopters were deployed, boats were deployed, but the ones who were left out somehow do remain left out. And I think there is no policy to look at that. When I was at the National Commission on the Status of Women, I carried out a gender analysis of existing sectoral national policies. The National Climate Change Policy recognizes that the impact of calamities, of environmental change can be very high on the marginal people, especially women. It also identified those groups, but we find that there is no action plan. The action plan is missing. And then the National Disaster Reconstruction Plan of 2019 does not include the gender perspective, the women's and the children's perspective at all. ये 2019 का है जब तक के हमारी कई calamities हो चुकी थी, उसमें हमें ये भी पता चल गया था. We all know that we are not responsible for climate change, but we are impacted by it. But then how prepared are we for that? And I think that's where the missing link is. We've got institutions, we've got NDMA, we've got provincial district management authority. Yesterday we were told there is another fund that is for risk management, but we do not find their presence and response and action plans. Their budgets are very limited, resource allocation is not available. So I think इस वक्त जो लम्हा फ़क्रिया है हमारे पास ये है कि इंस्टीट्यूशंस पे इंस्टीट्यूशंस बना दें, लेकिन लोगों की जो ज़रूरत है उस वक्त की वो पूरी नहीं होती. And I would like to end, because I think we only have 10 minutes, what I would like to end with or close with is that we need to recognize, and again it's been proven that the not-for-profits, the NGOs are the ones who reach out, but the current atmosphere environment for NGOs is very tight. उनके लिए स्पेस ही नहीं है काम करने की, उनको एक शक की नज़र से देखा जाता है, उनके काम को भी शक की नज़र से देखा जाता है. जबकि again and again we find that they deliver, and they need to be included in the planning that is to be done for preparing for the next calamity. We are going to have more and more calamities until the global climate change process is not, is not stopped or at least brought to some sort of a rational level. And in that I feel that their inputs need to be included. अगर कोई गलत काम कर रहा है तो हमारे यहाँ कानून बहुत है उनको रोकने के लिए, लेकिन जो अच्छा काम कर रहा है उनको हम कैसे शामिल करें, that should be our objective. And lastly I would say something that the Justice Saab has said, जो कि दिल को लगी थी, and this is one of the things that I've been campaigning for, is that food security is our highest priority. Women's role in that food security is something that is totally ignored. And how do we, for a long term, unless we create that equality between our citizens, the dignity and respect that women need, their capacity building to deal with disasters, all that is not part of any of the policies that we have discussed. And we analyzed 6 policies, except for the health policy, and that includes women, but it's not integrated with the other policies. So, as somebody yesterday said, we need integrated policies, and we need local government. Local government is your first port of responding, and we are devoid of those. So these are some of the issues that one needs to address if we want to be ready for the climate change impact, which is going to increase. It's not going to reduce.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Can you hear me? My next question is to Baba Jan, the civil rights and climate activist from Gilgit-Baltistan. Baba Jan, आपने podium में आना है. You're most welcome because there थोड़े mics में issues हैं. According to the Ministry of Climate Change, Pakistan faced 17 glacier lake outburst floods this summer in comparison to the 5 or 6 floods that occurred last year. How are vulnerable mountain communities coping with climate change? What support do they need?
मेरे स्टेज पे बैठे अकाबरीन और हाल में मौजूद तमाम दियार गैर के मेहमानान और मेरे मुल्क के अजीम, इस मुल्क के तकदीर बदलने के लिए यहाँ जमा हुए सामाईन, आप सबको मेरा सुरुख सलाम। मैं एक ऐसे जगह से यहाँ पे आया हूँ जहाँ की मुस्तकबिल बरसगीर के 2 अरब इंसानों की मुस्तकबिल के साथ, इनकी ज़िंदगियों के साथ वाबस्ता है, और लाताइदाद जंगली हयात, लाताइदाद जानवर और लाताइदाद नायाब परिंदों के ज़िंदगी का अनहसार गिलगित बल्तिस्तान और कश्मीर के पहाड़ों से है, वहाँ से निकलने के पानी से है। अगर गिलगित बल्तिस्तान के साथ आज हम मिलके नहीं सोचेंगे तो ये पूरा खित्ता बंजर होगा, गिलगित के बल्तिस्तान के पहाड़ सूख जाएंगे। उसके ऊपर ये प्रोग्राम रखने पे मैं अजीम हमारी मजलूमों की माँ इनकलाबी आसमा जहांगीर साहिबा फाउंडेशन, पाकिस्तान बार काउंसिल, सुप्रीम कोर्ट बार एसोसिएशन और आसमा जहांगीर लीगल हायर टीम को भी सलाम पेश करता हूँ। यहाँ पे हमें सोचने की ज़रूरत यह है कि जिस अंदाज से गिलगित बल्तिस्तान के अंदर तरक्की के नाम पे गैर मुकामी सरमायादारों को मादनियात के लीज़ दिए जाते हैं, उनका मकसद यहाँ के सरमायादार का मकसद वहाँ के सकाफत के साथ, वहाँ के मज़हब के साथ, वहाँ के तौर तरीक़े के साथ, वहाँ के आबो हवा के साथ, वहाँ के इंसानों के साथ, वहाँ के जंगली हयात के साथ कोई ताल्लुक़ नहीं है। उनका महज एक ही मंसूबा है, वो इस पूरे दुनिया को मलियामेट करके इलाके को जहन्नम बनाकर अपने लिए सरमाया कमाया जा सके। इस पे ऊपर हमें गौर करने की जरूरत है। जब इतना सारा मामला वहां पे हो रहा है, वहां पहाड़ के पहाड़ सिरक रहे हैं, कहीं पे बर्फ बट रहा है, कहीं पे बर्फ के जिले बन रही हैं और उनके नताइज में जमींदोज जिलजिले आ रहे हैं। यहां सड़कों की तामीर में बेपनाह बारूद के इस्तेमाल से पूरे पहाड़ हिल जाते हैं और उस वजह से भी तबाहियां आ रही हैं। लेकिन सड़कों को बनाने से पहले बदकिस्मती से वहां पे जो बनने वाली झीलों को बर्बाद करने वालों के साथ क्या हो रहा है, इस पे सोचने का मुकाम है। इस पे पाकिस्तान का उकला, पाकिस्तान का सहाफी, पाकिस्तान का उस्ताद, हर तबक़ई फिकर, तालिब इल्म, हत्ता कि हिंदुस्तान का भी तमाम तबके के ऊपर फर्ज बनता है कि इस पे सोचा जाए। ये दोनों मुल्कों का सैराब करने का सबसे बड़ी जो शहरी रग यही है, गिलगित बल्तिस्तान है। इस पे सोचने के बजाय वहां पे हम जब मुतासिरीन की बहाली की बात करते हैं, हम माहौलियात की बात करते हैं, हमारे ऊपर इंसदाद दहशतगर्दी एक्ट लगाकर पता नहीं कितने कितने सालों के लिए जेलों में डाला जाता है। वहां पे सांस लेने पे पाबंदी है। वहां कई सालों से इन मामलात को देखने के लिए बल्दियाती इंतखाबात लोकल लोगों को मजबूत करने के बजाय जजेस भी एक कलम के वज़ीर आज़म के, आपके इस्लामाबाद के और आपके यहाँ के रियासती अदारों के सिफारिश पर जजेस भर्ती होते हैं, इस मस्जिद से एक, इस मस्जिद से एक। वहाँ इंसानों का कोई शुमार नहीं है। इस सब के ऊपर देखने की जरूरत है। जब हमारे लोग सुप्रीम कोर्ट जाते हैं, आपके सुप्रीम कोर्ट कहता है गिलगित बल्तिस्तान पाकिस्तान का हिस्सा नहीं है। ठीक है जनाब, तो फिर आपका एफसी ने, आपका चीफ सेक्रेटरी, आपका एजीपीआर, आपके तमाम के तमाम K2 आपका और वहां के लोग आपके नहीं है। वहां के लोगों का के ऊपर सोचने का यहाँ पर पाबंदी है, बोलने का पाबंदी है। तो क्या किया जाए? अब हम इस नुक्ते से एक बहुत बड़ी तहरीक तामीर कर सकते हैं इंसानों के। मिसाल के तौर पर 2 ममालिक की एटमी अफवाज हमारे सियाचन पे, हमारे K2 पे, हमारे बलतुरु पे, हमारे बटरों पे, यहाँ इतने दोनों ममालिक के अफवाज बैठे हुए हैं जदीद असले के साथ। उससे भी हमारे माहौल और हमारे आने वाले नस्लों का खतरा हो सकता है। उसके लिए हम इस माहौलियाती इशू को लेके दोनों मुल्कों पर प्रेशर बढ़ा सकते हैं। वहां से फोर्सेस वापस लाए और वो अमन का गहवारा हो, वह वहां सयाहों के लिए खोल दिया जाए, न कि वहां जंगी साजो सामान से वहां जंगली हयात भी नुकसान में, इंसान भी नुकसान में और हमारे आने वाले नस्ल भी नुकसान में। मोअज़्ज़िज़ सामईन, गिलगित बल्तिस्तान के अंदर पूरे मुल्क समेत कई ममालिक को माहौल दोस्त बिजली पैदा करने के लिए कुदरती आपका नेचुरल सलोब के साथ साथ पानी मौजूद है। पानी से माहौल दोस्त बिजली बना सकते हैं। लेकिन वहां पानी से बिजली बनाने के बजाय सऊदी अरब से तेल लाते हैं कमीशन के खातिर। वहां का चपरासी से लेके आपका सदर तक कमीशन खोर है। हमारे वाले भी वहां के तेल ला के वहां बिजली पैदा कर रहे ताकि हमारे बर्फ के पहाड़, हमारा माहौल को आलूदा किया जाए। उनका कमीशन से गरज से 1 लाख मेगावाट बिजली वहां पैदा हो सकती है। बिजली पैदा नहीं करते, सस्ती बिजली, माहौल दोस्त बिजली। इनका कमीशन से गरज से इनको कैसे रोका जाए? ये इनकी लड़ाइयां भी कोई हकीकी लड़ाइयां नहीं है। ये सारे बड़े बूट वालों के दोनों तरफ से पॉलिसी हैं और कुछ नहीं बताऊंगा। इनको माहौल से गरज नहीं है, इंसानों से गरज नहीं है, कमीशन से गरज है। इसमें गिलगित बल्तिस्तान के अंदर जो चलने वाली गाड़ियां हैं, उनको, जो पुरानी गाड़ियां हैं, दुआदार गाड़ियां हैं, माल बरदार, उनको सड़कों से वापस करने की ज़रूरत है। और यहाँ से जो गाड़ियाँ आती हैं, चाहे माल बरदार हो, चाहे निजी गाड़ियाँ हो, और वहाँ पे जो थर्मल के जनरेटर्स हैं, उन पे पाबंदी की ज़रूरत है। और गैर मुकामी तमाम लीज को मनसूख करने की ज़रूरत है। इस पे हम गुजारिश करेंगे आप सबसे, हमारे सहाफ़ी हजरात यहाँ बैठे हैं, आप गिलगित बल्तिस्तान को भी नज़रअंदाज न करें। आप देखें, आप देखते रहे, लेकिन थोड़ा ज़्यादा देखने की ज़रूरत है। गिलगित बल्तिस्तान आपकी बका है, 2 अरब इंसानों की बका है, जानवरों की, जंगली हयात की और परिंदों के अलावा। अब सूरत हाल ये है कि वहाँ पे कल रात को 2 बजे एक पूरा मंदिर न था 4 दिनों से अवामी एक्शन कमेटी का, 2 बजे आके उठा के ले गए हैं उनको। ये है आपके पुराने पाकिस्तान और नए पाकिस्तान और मुशर्रफ नवाज सरकार जो भी है, फौज के, इन सब का एक रवैया है। तो वहाँ पे गिलगित बल्तिस्तान के अंदर, गिलगित बल्तिस्तान के जंगलात के कटाव रोकने के लिए क्या किया जाए। एक, इन कमीशन खोरों पे नज़र रखने की ज़रूरत है। किसी दिन गिलगित से, आप पंजाब से, ये हामिद मीर साहब आपसे गुजारिश करेंगे, एक कैमरामैन को भेज दीजिएगा कितना जंगल काट कर लकड़ी के लाठ लगे हुए हैं। हुकूमतें बदलते ही परमिट निकालते हैं, जंगल काट के रखते हैं। सड़क के आसपास में, दूर का नहीं कहूँगा आपको, देखे कितनी तबाही है। तो गिलगित बल्तिस्तान के अंदर जंगल को रोकने के लिए, मजीद जंगल बढ़ाकर वहाँ के पहाड़ों को बचाने के लिए क्या किया जाए। वहाँ के मफलूकुल हाल, मजलूम इंसानों को, जो किसी आईन के बगैर चलते हैं, किसी कानून के बगैर चलते हैं। एक बादशाह इस्लामाबाद से हुक्मनामे भेजता है, मेरी ये मर्जी आई, सोने से पहले गिलगित के बारे में ये जाकर इस तरह एक और उसकी मर्जी बदलती है। यानी हुक्मनामों के आर्डर के जरिए चलाए जाने वाले इलाके के लोगों को सब्सिडाइज गैस फराहम की जाए, ताकि वहाँ जंगल की डिफॉरेस्टेशन जो है ख़त्म हो सके। और साथ साथ हम आपसे मुतालिबा करेंगे, वहाँ जो इंसानी हुकूक के लिए काम करने वाले लोग हैं, जो सिविल सोसाइटी हैं, उनकी तहरीकों पर कदगन हैं, उनको आप अपना समझकर, जिस तरह केटू को अपना समझते हैं, वहाँ के रहने वाले इंसानों को अपना समझकर आप उन मसाइल को लेकर आगे चले। ऐसा न करने की सूरत में ये होगा कि इंसानियत भी ख़तरे में आएगी, फिर ये यहाँ की लड़ाइयाँ भी वहाँ आएंगी। लोग बहुत बर्दाश्त लोगों ने किया हुआ है, वो बर्दाश्त का मादा नौजवानों में से ख़त्म होता जा रहा है, फरियाद का मादा ख़त्म होता हुआ जा रहा है। तो ये इसके ज़िम्मेदार भी इस्लामाबाद के हुक्मरान हैं। हम वहाँ पे कुछ जगहों में, बल्तिस्तान में और हुंजा में शिशपल ग्लेशियर बना है, बल्तिस्तान के रुंदू के इलाके में ज़ीर ज़मीन ज़िलज़िले के झटके आए हैं, अताबाद झील में बना है, और नगर में और दियामर में और मुख्तलिफ जगहों में जो जितने पहाड़ हैं वो फट रहे हैं। उसके लिए बैनुल अक़वामी तौर पे जो माहिरीन हैं, उनको लाने के लिए क्या किया जाए। और लाने के लिए कोई माहिर लाता है तो यहाँ से आपका कोई हवलदार उसके कान में पकड़ कर वापस भेजता है। ये मसाइल हैं, इसको देखने की ज़रूरत है। वो आए, वो फिर सिफारिशात तैयार करें बैनुल अक़वामी माहिरीन, वो सिफारिशात के नतीजे में इंतज़ामिया अमल दरामद करे, और इंतज़ामिया मुकामी लोगों के हाथ में हो, मुकामी हुकूमतें हों, ज़िली हुकूमतें हों, वो अवाम का बेहतरीन, अब तारीख़ी तौर पे भी आपके तमाम तरीक़े से वो देख सकते हैं माहौल को बचाने के लिए। एक छोटा मिसाल दे के मैं अपनी बात को अख्तिताम करूँगा। इस साल 30 जून से 9 जुलाई तक हमारे गांव में एक धरना था। वहाँ कोई गैर मुकामी सरमाएदार को पूरा पहाड़ दिया गया है लीज पे, उसको अवाम ने नहीं छोड़ा है। सीपेक के ऊपर धरना था। वहाँ एक खातून, उसका नाम है बीबी, वो खड़ी होकर आई, बूढ़ी खातून थी। उसने कहा, मैं जब छोटी थी तो मैंने बकरियां भेड़ चराने गई थी, वहाँ से अपने साथ चंद जाड़ियों के, पुशूल नाम की एक जाड़ी है, उसके चंद शाखें तोड़ के लाई थी, हरी शाखें। तो मेरे घर पे शाम को छापा लगा, उस वक्त के गांव का माहिदीन ने, बड़ू ने छापा लगाया, छापा लगा के मेरे बाप से एक बेड़ू छीन के ले गया। जब मेरे 4 छोटी सी टहनियों पे, पशूल के हरी टहनियों पे इतना मेरे साथ उस वक्त हुआ, तो 8000 कनाल पहाड़ किसने दिया है? देने वाले का और लेने वाले का सर कलम करो कह के एक बूढ़ी खातून ने यह पैगाम दिया। उस वक्त हमारे ये तरीक़ेकार थे, कोई मारखोर नहीं मार सकता था, कोई ये जुनिपर के दरख्त थे उनको हरे किसी दरख्त को नहीं काट सकते थे, सख्त पाबंदियां थी, यानी इंसान के कत्ल के बराबर उसको सजा दी जाती थी, उसकी जमीन उठाई जाती थी। लेकिन ये किराए और कमीशन के एजेंट जो 70 साल से वहां पे गासिबाना बैठे हुए हैं, ये हमारे दरख्त भी काटते हैं, हमारे दरिया भी बेचने लगे हैं सरमाएदारों को, और वो ताकि किराए के बिजली उनसे, बिजली घरों से बिजली उठाई जा सके, हमारा हर चीज़ बेचने पे लगे हैं। लेकिन अच्छी बात है गिलगित बल्तिस्तान का पढ़ा लिखा नौजवान तुलबा तालिबात आगे आ रही है और लड़ रही हैं, ये खुशाइंद है। तो हमें इस माहौल को बचाने के लिए, इस वतन के मुस्तकबिल के लिए गिलगित बल्तिस्तान को, कश्मीर के पहाड़ों को देखने की ज़रूरत है। यहाँ दोनों ममालिक से डिमांड करने की ज़रूरत है फिलफौर अपनी अफवाज को वापस लें। वसलाम, बहुत शुक्रिया।
Thank you so much, Babajan, for your inspiring and illuminating speech. Next question is to Naz Baloch, the Parliamentary Secretary for Climate Change. What has been the government's response to the floods? अगर आपने podium पे आना है तो बेशक आप आ जाएं। माइक आपका अगर नहीं सही, उधर echo आता है थोड़ा सा तो। So let's hear the government's response to the floods. And also if you can talk about our national climate change policy that was formulated in 2012 and about the Climate Change Act 2017.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, I want to thank for having this great opportunity to be here at the Asma Jahangir annual conference and speaking on a subject like climate change, which is the most important subject not only in Pakistan but in the world. But before I start speaking on climate change, I would just like to say a few words remembering Asma Jahangir and her efforts and her struggle for true democracy in Pakistan and for being the voice to the voiceless people. A very strong and a very courageous, a very brave lady who knew whatever she did was for the innocent people, for the deprived people, and made sure that she raises the voice and turns to be the voice of the voiceless people. I think we can speak volumes on her struggle and her efforts and whatever she did to be known and renowned personality of Pakistan, which we always are going to miss. She was not only a legal person, a legal champion, but she was a great human rights activist. Well, speaking on climate change, as everyone knows, the recent flooding in Pakistan has washed away villages, leaving millions of people homeless. Kids are out of school, and millions of people are facing serious health concerns. There is a huge and a very sharp increase in the waterborne diseases. I particularly coming from the south of Pakistan, which has been unfortunately the most seriously affected areas. And also, when I speak of it, I want to let everyone know the devastation that has been caused in the northern part of Pakistan, that's the KPK. Also, Balochistan, one of the most affected provinces. As we all know that Pakistan is a home to more than 7,000 glaciers. It's a huge number. But when we know and we realize that a scorching temperature of 52 degrees Celsius is nothing but a destruction and devastation at such a point of time, and knowing our geographical location. Pakistan cannot come out of all this situation all by itself because we lack resources. And above all, we are the sufferers. We are not the creators of this situation. We are not the factors who have contributed to the climate change. In fact, we are the ones who are striving hard for climate action. But yes, we seek support from all the countries who've seen a sharp boom in industrialization. And we've been discussing this on all forums. Talking on climate change, I can speak a lot, but the circumstances that Pakistan is facing are very serious. The challenges in the wake of climate change, despite the fact that Pakistan is a low contributor of the problem, that means only we are emitting less than 1%, that is 0.8% contribution of global greenhouse gases emissions as per GHS Inventory 2018. Pakistan continues to suffer as one of the most impacted countries. In 2021, Pakistan was categorized as one of the 3 countries that have continuously remained in the top 10 list of most impacted countries over the past decade. Pakistan has also been ranked as the 8th most vulnerable country to climate change, according to Global Climate Risk Index 2021, report by German Watch that I'm discussing and highlighting. In terms of climate-related challenges, including water stress, glacier melting, extreme events, and spread of diseases, Pakistan has been the epicenter of cascading climate disasters during 2022. As I mentioned earlier, the glacier lake outburst floods is one of the serious concerns that we are focusing and trying to address. Forest fires, torrential monsoon rainfalls that have triggered the unprecedented floodings in my country. The recent floods have severely compounded the economic challenges of Pakistan. As we all know that we are already facing a huge economic crisis. And on top of that, a country which is already striving hard to make both ends meet, and we are facing this kind of disaster. The loss incurred has been estimated of around $40 billion. We are definitely looking forward towards the COP27 conference that's coming in Egypt, and we'll make sure that Pakistan does not only discusses and makes strong dialogues, but also makes a better smooth working relation with the countries who need to contribute and actually do more to save this globe, to save our planet, and to save our motherland. Pakistan has made immense efforts in policy making. Yes, we need to have better policies. Yes, we need to do more, implement more and more. But still, whatever Pakistan has done has to be appreciated. We formulated a national climate change policy 2021, which is focusing on various sectors to reduce the climate impacts. The submission of Pakistan National Determined Contributions, which has been revised in 2021 under the Paris Agreement. National Electric Vehicle Policy 2019 for paving shifts towards electric automobiles. The Hazardous Waste Management Policy 2022 for efficient disposal of solid waste. Now, these are the most important things that Pakistan, we feel we need to focus on and we are working on. The 10 billion tree tsunami project, almost 1.8 billion plants planted so far. Protected area initiative to conserve ecologically important areas. Then comes the Ecosystem Restoration Initiative, facilitating transition towards environmentally resilient Pakistan and attaining land degradation neutrality. Recharge Pakistan is another program for climate resilience and water security through cost-effective ecosystem-based adaptation. The glacial outburst flood, which we call GLOF, for continuation of GLOF 1 and to mitigate GLOF-related risks. As I discussed, that we are a home to more than 7,000 glaciers. Therefore, this flood has it's created havoc. When I speak of it, there are places which were so shocking to see through the satellite images. Almost 100 kilometers of new lakes that this flood created. It's something beyond imagination. That means it's changing the shape of the earth, and in a negative manner. Glacial lake outburst that I discussed is definitely one of the most important subjects that we are working on. Pakistan Clean Air Program, again, mitigating the air pollution. Climate resilient agriculture, US $35 million GCF grant was signed with FAO for Punjab and the province of Sindh. Banning the plastics, capacity building on water quality, as I discussed and mentioned, the waterborne diseases, national adaptation plan, gendered and climate mainstreaming, one of the most important subjects which is usually ignored, but this government is specifically working hard on it because we know that our women are the ones who are suffering the most. Climate resilient urban human settlements and living Indus initiative. There is so much that, of course, I wanted to share, but I'm sure, as I'm short of time, all that I can say that it's a time that the world is moving on and focusing on food insecurity. It's an unnatural phenomena, and it's a natural phenomena too. We need to combat together, join hands together, but the government of Pakistan is focused to help protect the environment because we know we cannot change nature and already we are too late. I think the world is too late because when we were speaking of climate change as the most geographically being on the most difficult situation, I think maybe this was not the priority of the rest of the world and especially the West when we speak of. But today, when Pakistan has witnessed the worst flood in the human history, I think it's high time the world needs to collaborate and join hands to protect the motherland. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think we're running a bit out of time. So can I request Ali, Taqir, and Rafe, and Abrar, Sasha, to just keep their presentations to 5 minutes, not more. So my next question is to Ali Taqir Sheikh, who's a well-known climate change and water resources expert. Aapne upar podium par aana hai. What are the official approaches to addressing disasters in Pakistan, and can you identify the policy gaps, both at the local level and at the international level?
Thank you, Ms. Chair. I'm sure Asma Jahangir is listening to this conversation from up in the skies, from the heavens. And I want to thank her not only for what she did when she was alive, but also for triggering a process that has at least enabled me today to speak to so many young aspirant members of the legal fraternity to talk about climate justice in the context of questions that the chair has asked me to raise. So it's a unique opportunity for me. Your question is that what are the gaps in policy? I wish to submit the policies should never be seen in isolation. Policies need to be reviewed or looked at in the context of the institutional capacity. An A-class document that does not have A-class institutions to support will have several challenges. Second point in this regard, policies sometimes lack priorities. When you have urgencies of the kind that we are facing, question is, what are or ought to be our urgencies. And I wish to submit three. I don't know if they are covered in the policies that the people have referred to. First, that climate vulnerability is first and foremost a local vulnerability. Its solutions lie in local action. I think Baba Jan highlighted that very eloquently, that how local knowledge and wisdom can guide. And local action can be facilitated only by local governments, not simply by procedures for or rules for local governance, local government. Unfortunately, People's Party, Pakistan Muslim League, PTI, all leading parties in the countries have been reluctant to introduce and initiate the third tier of our governance. And that is people's rights that has been denied. And unless local government is there, municipal services cannot be delivered. And municipal services, a new name for them, are the environmental services. That is sewerage, that's drinking water, that's passage for storm water, and things of this sort. That's protection of communal lands, jinko hum shamlat kehte hain. And that is the function of local government. And that is the first step to resilience. Imagine for a moment when you don't have that, you will have only the military to come, which will have better discipline, better equipment, and stocks to undertake relief services. When you do that, that means that the civilian apparatus has collapsed or does not exist to begin with and cannot deliver and take charge of their lives and livelihoods. So my first submission is that in terms of gaps and priorities, where is the local government? Where is the local action? Where are the local adaptation plans of action? Unless we have local adaptation plans, we will be undertaking a very expensive path of development that can be wasteful, that can be slower, that can be riddled with corruption and elite capture. My second point that I wanted to make, that like human beings and other species, water bodies also have right to life. Be these rivers, be these lakes, these groundwater. Now, if we violate their right, we are encroaching our river banks, we are building human settlements on their way, we are inviting trouble. We can never succeed, we can never conquer water. Most of the damages that have happened in this country because of floods, 2010 was mentioned, I guess, and these ones also, are because that we interfered in the passage of the water. We did not respect its right to flow. And there are many reasons. You know, one particular reason is land use and land use planning laws either do not exist, or they are very weak, or they are not adhered to or complied with. And violation oftentimes happens because of absence of local government. Because then the functionaries can issue permits and licenses. And that is why the housing societies, yesterday I think I heard the chronic issue of plots. A lot of areas that was communal land and forest and state forest and shamlats then goes to elite housing societies. And now, as we see on TV screens, they're moving to the next band. It's not only Lahore, Karachi, and big cities, it are the smaller towns that are dotting in the city. And that's very closely linked, as Justice was saying in his keynote address, to the food security issues as well. So therefore, my second point, in order to conclude, is let's respect water, and that can, water bodies and their right to live. It's not always the legal issues. In some countries, they try to make it a legal right. There are challenges in its enforcement, particularly if you have weaker governance, but it's an ethical and human survival issue in many other sense. My third and last point, in terms of urgencies, resilience is a function of resilient infrastructure. If the standards of our infrastructure were defined and introduced by the Britishers' Raj period, we are bound to err, bound to be vulnerable. Therefore, my submission is that we need to have augmented, strengthened, improved construction standards, materials, building codes, and zoning laws. अगर बलूचिस्तान में लोगों के कच्चे घर गिरे हैं तो गिरने चाहिए थे. It doesn't surprise me. Why it will surprise anybody? If more than 70% of houses in Sindh have collapsed only because they were kacha houses, that is our fault. It is not their crime that they are poor. So this is because we have not invested enough thinking in our policies and in our budget allocations to ensure that our infrastructure is resilient. Our bridges, our roads, our other infrastructure, and particularly resilient housing is the most important one, because without shelter, human dignity is compromised. Imagine if we are living with our families and children on the roadside without any facilities. So I conclude that now we are talking what to do. Let's not invest in fragility. We are preparing ourselves for the next floods if we are asking people to reconstruct same houses at same locations with same materials at same flood-prone areas. And the governments and some very leading NGOs that are being promoted these days are all doing that, and that is not a good news for us. This is a road of maladaptation. The infrastructural investment that Pakistani state has done has reduced from 15 billion a year in PSDP to 5, and because of these disasters, this 500 billion, and because of these disasters, we don't even have 500 billion. But whatever loans or grants or international finance that we are seeking, donations and philanthropists we are reaching out to, I think we'll be failing them, we were cheating them, unless we address these three questions of local government, respecting the right of the passage of water bodies, and infrastructure that is climate resilient. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Without wasting any more time, Rafe Alam, please could you come to the podium? So let's shift the perspective to the international climate negotiations. So Rafe, you're going to be going to Egypt. This will be the 27th COP. That means 27 meetings have taken place. These are COP, Conference of Parties, signatory to the UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Rafe, why are these UN climate conferences not delivering?
I'm not going to waste my time on that, Raina. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I want to thank and congratulate the Asma Jahangir conference for hosting such a spectacular event, specifically Tahir Jahangir Saab, Munize and Sulema. Congratulations. Asma Jahangir was my introduction to law. In 94-95, I wasn't even a law student, and I interned with her. And as a mentor, she really guided me into the profession, and I'm incredibly proud to be here as a legacy of an unbelievably wonderful woman. I also want to appreciate the efforts of Mr. Justice Shahid Kareem with the fantastic job with Haroon Farooq sir. We salute you. Dekhin ji, the Earth's atmosphere is in balance so that we as human civilization can live here. यहाँ पानी है, यहाँ हवा है, इसके बगैर यहाँ कुदरत ज़िंदगी नहीं मिलेगी आपको. And this is in a balance. You tip this balance and the very things that allow humanity to live here will go away. Climate change is caused by human beings. It's caused by greenhouse gases. जब आप कोई चीज़ ज़मीन से निकाल के उसको जलाते हैं, चाहे वो कोयला हो, दरख्त हो, तेल हो, पेट्रोल हो, गैस हो, उससे कहीं ना कहीं ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस पैदा होंगी. और उन ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस का what they do is they trap the sun's heat in the atmosphere. और आहिस्ता आहिस्ता नहीं, जल्द अज जल्द टेम्परेचर बढ़ना शुरू हो गया। और सनती इनकलाब के मुकाबले में आज 2022 में दुनिया ऑन एवरेज 1.1-1.2 डिग्री सेंटीग्रेड ज्यादा गर्म है, सिर्फ 1.1। मगर इस 1 डिग्री सेंटीग्रेड पे आप देखें पाकिस्तान में जिस तरह की फ्लडिंग हुई है इस साल, इस वक्त नाइजीरिया में जो 32 स्टेट्स हैं उनमें से 28 स्टेट्स फ्लड के अंदर हैं। स्पेन के अंदर फ्लडिंग हो रही है, चीन के अंदर पानी नहीं है, यूरोपियन हीट वेव गुजरे। दिस इज जस्ट 1 डिग्री। वी आर सीइंग फॉरेस्ट फायर्स इन द आर्कटिक सर्कल, ओशंस एसिडिफाई, coral reefs collapse, and we have plastic in our bodies. ग्रीन हाउस गैस मेजर करने के लिए हम फिजा के अंदर कार्बन की शिद्दत गिनते हैं। 2022 में इट वाज 420 पार्ट्स पर मिलियन। नाउ आपको इंसानी तारीख नहीं, इस अर्थ की तारीख में कोई 2 करोड़ साल पहले जाना पड़ेगा टू फाइंड अ प्लेस ऑन अर्थ at a time where there was 420 parts per million. ये हमारे human existence के अंदर ऐसा example आपको नहीं मिलेगा, and that was the Paleocene extinction event. Look it up. And so at 420 parts per million, now we are in a Anthropocene extinction event today. It's not something that's about to happen. We are in an extinction event. It has happened. अब इस क्लाइमेट चेंज को काबू करने के लिए 1992 में यूनाइटेड नेशंस फ्रेमवर्क कन्वेंशन ऑन क्लाइमेट चेंज वाज साइंड, और इसका मकसद था कि ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस को किसी ना किसी तरह 21वीं सदी के अंदर स्टेबलाइज कर दिया जाए। और उस स्टेबलाइजेशन के तरीके जो थे वो 2 मुख्तलिफ तरीके थे। एक जो जापानी शहर क्योटो 1996 में तय किया गया था कि सनती इनकलाब के मुकाबले में 2 डिग्री सेंटीग्रेड से ज़्यादा टेम्परेचर नहीं बढ़ने देंगे। दैट वाज कॉल्ड द क्योटो प्रोटोकॉल। सिर्फ 2 डिग्रीज, उस पर लोग शोर डाल पाए। The small island states rose up in revolt and said 2 degrees centigrade corresponds to sea level rise that will wipe out their countries. Just flood them and wipe them out. तो उन्होंने लॉबी करके पेरिस में in 2016 they got the international community to agree that they would try and keep global weather and temperature within 1.5 degrees of global warming, not 2 degrees, 1.5. तो ये पेरिस और क्योटो है। मगर प्रॉब्लम ये है that since 1992 and the execution of the UNFCCC, this earth has produced more greenhouse gases than all of history earlier. All of history. कोई stabilization नहीं हुई. Nothing. As a matter of fact, at 420 parts per million, you are locked into a 1.5 degree temperature increase by the end of this decade and a 2 degree temperature increase by 2050. Ye hoga. There are no ifs and buts about it. And there are no safe amounts of climate change. Ye 1.52 degrees ke baare mein jo hum sunte hain, it's not like a motorway speed limit ke jahan usko aap cross karenge to masle chadenge. These are going to be devastating impacts to human civilization. According to one report, the difference between 1.5 and 2 degrees of global warming will be 150 million deaths, mostly because of air pollution associated with the energy and transport sectors in Asian and African cities. 150 million people is 4 times the number of soldiers who died in World War I and World War II put together. And this is it's happening here. Pakistan mein jo abhi smog season hoga, that is costing us lives, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of lives every single year. And going forward, our future is going to be 3 months of air pollution, 9 months of unlivable heat waves, coupled with unbelievable precipitation and unbelievable flooding. Food systems are going to be eviscerated. The Hindu Kush, Karakoram, Himalayan mountain ranges are over. There's no if and but. So please understand, there's no ye hone wala hai, ye ho raha hai aur hoga. So what do we do in these circumstances? Well, like Dr. Saab will give you the science, Abrar will give you the science, but we have to address and stop the drivers of the climate crisis, and they are capitalism, consumerism, patriarchy, colonialism, and the fossil fuel economy. If you don't recognize these as the drivers of the climate crisis, we have no hope in hell to do anything about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rafe. Last but not least, I'd like to ask Dr. Abrar Chaudhry, a climate finance expert from Oxford University, about the challenges of getting climate finance to Pakistan. Of course, Pakistan needs money. We're going to the COP to Egypt. We're going to be asking for loss and damage, and Dr. Abrar can fill us in. Thank you. I think he'll be connecting with us virtually from England.
Can you hear me?
He was online just a couple of minutes ago.
Check if I'm audible.
Ji, start, Dr.
Just want
Abrar.
to check if you can hear my voice. If you give me a thumbs up.
Yeah. Can you see me? We can hear you.
Okay, it seems everyone can hear me. I can't hear anyone, but I hope my voice is getting through.
Yes, just come close to the mic.
Hard act to follow after Rafe. I think he's made a very strong point of where we are and what we need to do, and that the climate change has arrived. And it's also, just before I start, I do want to thank Asma Jahangir Conference for inviting me, and I've known Asma ji, I knew her for a while, and she was a huge inspiration. And I want to acknowledge that as I go through, as I was thinking about what to say, I was thinking about how she would react to many of those things. So it's wonderful actually, to hear from all the different speakers. And one of the key things that, of course, you pick up is that we have developed a much stronger understanding of climate change. हमें समझ आ रही है, we're talking about loss and damage, we're talking about reparations, we're talking about mitigation and adaptation. So that has really come into our language. And we also recognize that no country has suffered more than what Pakistan has. The current flooding was just another of the disasters that we've seen, and we're seeing this more and more. But what I want to drive here is, I want to move towards action. We've heard a lot about the challenges. We've also heard a lot about the local challenges, which was fantastic to hear. But my focus today is really trying to show you two futures. And the first future is where Pakistan wants climate justice. We've been talking about climate justice. Our leaders have been going around telling the world that, we don't need charity. We need justice. We need money. And this is because of the emissions that the West has caused. And that's fair. I completely agree with this. This is what needs to happen. And we know that the COP is happening in 2 weeks. And I want to give you a future of the COP, what I think would happen in the COP. We will go there, our leaders will go there, our NGOs will go there, our communities will go there, and everyone will sympathize. Everyone will come to us and say, what, we feel for you. We feel what's happened to Pakistan. We feel for the population. We can see the suffering. And so personally, everyone understands, at a human to human level, we understand the suffering. We understand what's happened. But when they take a formal approach, when they go into the negotiations, things change. Because we see the world from our eyes, which is very important. But in order to be successful, we also need to see the world from other people's eyes. How is the world looking at Pakistan? How is the world operating right now? And what we see, they'll come back. They'll say, we'll give you a bit more money, but right now we're in a global recession. We have a huge energy crisis going. We have homelessness. We have other challenges that we have to deal with. There are wars happening elsewhere. There are election challenges happening. And when we go to loss and damage, they'll come back and say, yes, we understand that you need loss and damage. You need this money. But this will open up legal cases where, we will be liable. Their lawyers will stop them. So what really happens, right? People want to give justice, but they'll incrementally push us forward. And they'll say, we've set up a green climate fund. We've allocated 100 billion, but that hasn't really come in. Why don't you apply for that money? Why don't you get money from there? We do sympathize, but there isn't much that can happen. And we'll keep raising our voices, right? We'll keep going back and saying, no, 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 we need this. And as Rafi was saying, it's not just going to be us. There'll be people from Sudan, there'll be people from the Horn of Africa, there'll be people from other parts of the world, because disasters are happening all over the world. And the challenge is that, our voices will start to go down. And we will have to wait for, the next disaster for us to demand more. And then we'll have the same cycle going on and on again, because there'll be something else happening. So the challenge here is that in this world, in this climate justice world, which I completely agree with, that we deserve this, we need this. It's not charity. We will be waiting for the world to come to us. We'll be praying and hoping that another disaster doesn't happen, and the world will come and step up. And that's our thinking. That's one future that I'm giving you. And I know it doesn't seem very, very hopeful, but that is a very plausible future where, we keep demanding and we keep asking and we keep seeing these disasters. And so we'll have to think, okay, what do we do with this? But there is a second future as well. And that's my provocation here, because I want to end this, on something that I think is possible, but is very uncomfortable. And that is a future where you think of Pakistan as, the headline would be Pakistan, the climate leader, leading a just transition. And what does that mean? That means that we have to make climate change our raison d'etre, which really means our reason for being. And why we should focus so much on climate change is because Pakistan is ground zero. This is where climate is happening. This is where climate meets the world. We have glaciers at one end. We heard 7,000 glaciers, 1,000 kilometers of gloss right now. The monsoons hit us. We have river systems. So if you want to see what climate disaster and what climate action or what climate challenges are, this is where Pakistan is. So this should be our number one priority. This should be our existence. And we should be thinking about it because we know that climate change has arrived. So what can we do? And this is where I want to give a few suggestions. And I want to talk to the community that's sitting here. We've got a wonderful conference with people who are actual leaders. They're the ones who will make a difference. If you look around, these are the people who can do something about climate. So I want to start with the educationist first. I feel climate change should be a core learning in every school, starting from primary schools. And the reason is because we may not exist, but the next generation is going to suffer a lot more. So they need to understand what are the challenges, what is happening outside, and they can simply walk out of their schools and actually see the challenges, see the flooding, see the poverty, see the vulnerability. So we need to expose our generation of young people to challenges and not just sit in schools and learn. We have to make sure that the educationists build programs, whether they're undergraduate program, whether they're postgraduate programs, focused on climate action, climate science. Throughout the world, there are new climate schools coming all across. Just one example, Stanford just got $1 billion funding to build a new school. The funders are not naive. They understand that this is the challenge of the future. And so the world is investing in education, training its people. And this is what Pakistan should be doing. When we look at research, I was fortunate to be in Pakistan in August, where I ran a climate workshop with many young PhD academics. And my discussion or my take with them was that I'm not here to teach you. I'm here to cooperate with you. Because what you are sitting on is a gold mine. What you are working on is what the world needs. They need data, they need information, they need to understand what's really happening on ground. And I can help you get that publication out. I can help you bring what's missing here. So we should be cooperating. We should be offering to the world that, listen, we have all the data here. We have all the information. If you want to study glaciers, come work with us, with our university. So the universities have to take this proactive approach, not wait. for justice, but bring people in. And we've seen examples in Bangladesh, in other countries where they've taken this up so strongly, and you see such fantastic research coming out that it actually keeps this issue alive. It's not just our voices, it's not just our lungs screaming for justice, it's our work, it's our research, it's our data that's talking as well. So that's my first ask for the educationists, that you can do this. You can bring climate top of the agenda. The second is the business community that I want to go towards. You know, climate change is a huge opportunity as well. It's a huge business opportunity if you think about it. Almost, I've looked up this figure, $274 trillion will be required just for energy and land change transition. And other sectors have to come in this as well. So when we start to look at businesses, you realize that this is an opportunity. You know, I speak to businesses and they say, oh, you know, we're looking at technology. We're thinking of building technologies and we're trying to, you know, create these new ideas. And for all those businesses, I say, you know, you're 20 years late. It's already happened. It's gone. The era of technology is gone. Someone else has captured it. You know, Silicon Valley, Bangalore, Berlin, London, they're already made those hubs. So what we get are crumbs. And that's not going to get us anywhere. That will not make us transform. That's not where the next unicorn, those are like the $100 billion companies going to come. But climate is open right now. We are in an era which we call the era of fermentation, that there isn't a model out there. Everyone's working on this. There isn't something that's been settled. So our businesses should unlock their capital. Think about not investing in real estate, which is unproductive. The amount of money that goes in real estate, if that money went into climate innovation, believe me, we would have amazing number of companies coming out from this part. We should be the ones who should be telling the world how to manage floods, because we experience floods. When you experience something, you can tell the world, this is what happens. We should be exporting those capabilities to the rest of the world. We should be the one who should be producing net zero t-shirts or sustainable rice or low carbon milk. Yeah. Because once we start to push these products out, this is what the world needs and they will come to us. So while we can chase the $100 billion, that is for the entire developing countries, we're missing out on the trillions that are sitting there to be invested. Companies right now are looking for ways to come in, and this is where our next innovation should come in. This is where the businesses should open up and think and make themselves uncomfortable. And there's a great example, like an example I was looking. If you look at the bazooka football, you know, that came from Pakistan. That's the football that was used in the World Cup. And I looked up, you know, I did some research on that, and it was very interesting that before that football, you know, we were producing footballs by hand in Sialkot. And so one entrepreneur decided that, okay, you know, he's going to move from producing footballs from hand to setting up this machinery. He made himself uncomfortable. There were lots of challenges around it, but that paid off. So the only way we can actually progress in private sector is when we start to become uncomfortable. We start to get out of our comfort zone, not invest in the industry that are not taking us anywhere in the world, but start thinking about climate technology. And I think that's what's really needed. For the funders and the international organization, I would say, you know, don't give us a fish to eat, teach us how to fish. In my 10 years of research on climate change and climate finance, the biggest challenge, the one challenge that I've seen is that we do not have, developing countries do not have the capabilities to develop strong proposals and projects. Because you need a lot of knowledge, you need a lot of resources, you need to understand what climate change is, and there's hardly any projects coming out of Pakistan that are local where you're able to get global funding. Yes, we get projects given to us, but that's not enough. So my ask for the funders and the international organizers sitting here is, give us the capabilities, teach us how to develop those projects. don't give us projects. Because we need to develop that indigenous knowledge. We have the data, the resources, but we don't have the capacity. And as our challenges are becoming bigger, it's going to get harder and harder to get those projects. Like if you look at Green Climate Fund, of the 200 projects that have been approved, of the $11 billion that they've committed, there is one single Pakistani project, local project. I'm not talking about the international one, equal to $10 million. So the world says, we want justice, but how are we capturing those projects? How are we developing and getting the money that's already there? So for the funders, it is, help us develop those capabilities, use your money to catalyze funding and develop those skills. And then for the government, my ask is, every ministry should be a climate change ministry. And the reason why I say this is climate change on its own is meaningless. It becomes a challenge when it hits. We spoke about food security, it's climate and food security, climate energy, climate and transportation, climate and health. So every ministry needs to understand what the implications of climate are. As Ali Sheikh Saab was saying, no point in reconstructing the same houses when floods will come and destroy everything. So who's within transportation or the housing ministry is really focusing on what climate compatible or housing needs to look like? But the biggest kind of tool that the government has is public procurement. That's the biggest leverage that they have. And so the moment they start to put in climate conditions, climate obligations, you'll start to see more and more innovation happen. When you're building roads, when you're building infrastructure, I'm not saying you go all the way to the top, but start building some of these elements, energy efficiencies, and you'll see innovations happen. And I think that's a very important thing. And my last provocation or urge is for the youth, because I could see a lot of young people sitting in this room. And there's a very nice Native American proverb which says, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. And so we are custodians. We don't own this. We will at one point pass away. We will go. But what are we leaving? And so it's for this youth, and the youth will also inherit this for the next generation and so forth. And so my ask for them is, you've got the most powerful tool in your pocket right now. If you look in your pocket, you put your hand in, you'll find a phone. And that is connecting you to the entire world, to the entire network. You are closer to people or to anyone that you can imagine. So use this power, use this tool to research, to connect with the right networks, to research on climate action, find the right solutions, connect it to solutions and challenges that are on the ground. Use this power, use this technology, because the next jobs that are coming in, like in the oil transition, we'll lose about 10 million jobs, but the green technologies will create 100 million jobs. So it's very important that we start to think about how the youth, how the young people can focus on this, because these are going to be the jobs of the future. And so my urge for them is really start thinking, start researching on these challenges. And so I'll stop here, but I just wanted to show you that these two futures, right? The first future is climate justice that we need, but here we're waiting for the world to come to us. We're sitting in our comfort zone. We're hoping something would happen. And as I showed you, these challenges are going to get bigger and they're going to get more expensive. And the other side, the other future is where Pakistan takes leadership. It develops its own resources. It gets the educationists, the private sector, the public sector, everyone working on climate change. And there's no doubt that we're not able to succeed. But the only thing we'll have to do here is to start becoming uncomfortable. And I'm pretty sure if, Asma Ji is hearing this, she's someone who's always been uncomfortable. She's done things that made everyone else uncomfortable. And that's where the learning starts to come in. When you start to do things differently, that's where you start to learn. So on that very note, thank you so much. And I hope, we choose a future that would help us succeed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abrar. I think we really run out of time. I'm so sorry, there's just no time for questions. We have to now move towards lunch, I think. So if you have any burning questions, all the panelists, they'll be available at lunchtime. So please ask them your questions then. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Not lunch, next session. Sorry, next session. Someone's hungry. So thank you so much for coming, and hope to see you later. Thank you everyone for coming and listening. Fascinating discussion. I've learned so much myself. Thank you, Ji.
Hello, mic check.
Okay. The next session, Media Under Siege, is going to start. I'm going to invite Arifa Noor Saiba to come on the stage to moderate.
I've learned through the years many lessons. What activism must be all about. Activism must come with the heart, with integrity, but it must also come with the mind.
Her passion and mission was fighting for the rights of the downtrodden. When she passed in 2018, for too many people, a beacon of hope had been extinguished. But passion can't die, and missions can't be abandoned. So even after Asma, the AGHS Legal Aid Cell continues to journey on her path, extending free legal aid to thousands, especially women and children, who would otherwise barely be able to afford.
ये तो नहीं. Oh, hi, Lena. While to sort of focus on really looking forward to your session. Let people settle down. Okay. We're already running late. I know you. नहीं नहीं आप अपना पूरा करो. Please sit down. We are starting with our next session. Please सब बैठ जाएं. हमारा अगला सेशन शुरू होने लगा है. आप अपनी then you'll have to. So I think it's up to the speakers how, at least in the sessions I've been to so far, if somebody wants to speak from here, they can speak from here. I think it should be up to you. We shouldn't be so draconian about it, considering that we're talking about authoritarianism and.
Are you going to keep sitting here or on the rostrum?
As you want, whatever you comfortable with.
If you're sitting here, then everyone can keep sitting.
अच्छा मतलब कि मुझे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. Would everybody prefer to talk here or up there?
Stream media and by very popular shows. They have addressed that issue.
Asma Jahangir believed that only an empowered woman could bring real change in society. She established a paralegal program to raise awareness among women.
Please बैठ जाएं. हमारा next session पहले late हो गया है. देखें, excuse me, please पीछे.
I'm sure you're aware, but आपको see
हाँ 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 मैं मुझे बता दिया
प्लीज़ सब तशरीफ़ रख लें, सेशन स्टार्ट होने वाला है।
Assalamu alaikum ji. Can everybody please settle down so we can begin? Okay. Welcome to Media Under Siege in India, Sri Lanka and Pakistan. हाँ? वो तो कह चुके हैं, वो नहीं मान रहे ना। आ जाए आप आज। Can everybody please settle down? ओ अल्लाह दा ना है, सारे बह जाओ, की कर रहे हो? बेहतर है। मीर साहब ने मुझे कहा है कि जरा उर्दू में और पंजाबी में बात करो, सारे खामोश हो जाएंगे. So apologies for that. Anyway, I'll start again. Welcome to the session on media under siege in India, Sri Lanka and Pakistan. I think, where the media in Pakistan is concerned, we keep talking about the pressures that we face, which seem to be increasing with every passing year. But sometimes it's also important to remember that this is something not isolated to Pakistan. Within the region, a lot of our colleagues face similar pressures. And if we look worldwide also at the moment, the media does face a number of challenges in places that we perhaps earlier did not expect it to, whether you talk about the West with its better democratic values. South Asia in itself has, of course, had a mixed record. We've also had a very lively media, unlike a lot of other countries where the democracy or the age of the nation state is still relatively young. But these have been difficult times, and I think the illustrious panel that I have here today, which has kindly agreed to join us, give us time, has a great experience and will be able to throw light on it. I will begin by inviting Hamid Mir Sahab. He needs no introduction. He has been, what shall I say, a permanent face on television since the channels were introduced to Pakistan. He has been banned twice, shot, and I think the rest I'll leave up to him. Mir Sahab.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much. First of all, I must pay tribute to Asma Jahangir, because all of us are here due to her struggle and her commitment for the human rights. और जो हमारा जो आज का सब्जेक्ट है, first of all, I must tell you that when I came on the stage, so the local media, they asked me that this is an international conference and most of the speakers are speaking in English language, but there are some requirements for, so please हमारा भी ख्याल रखें, थोड़ा सा उर्दू में भी बोल लें. So before I start, I must say sorry to our honorable guest, Mr. Steve Butler, who is sitting on the stage. Mr. Steve Butler was blacklisted in 2019 just because he wrote an article in Washington Post and he criticized the anti-media policies of the then government, and he was put on the stop list. So in the first Asma Jahangir conference, he was invited, he came here, And then again, he was invited and he was stopped and he was deported from Pakistan. From the Lahore airport, he was deported. So at that time, Mr. Imran Khan was the Prime Minister. And this time, he was invited again. And most of you are aware that again, he was detained on the Lahore airport. He spent 8 hours there. Finally, when there was some intervention, so he was allowed to enter in Pakistan, and now he is sitting here. But he faced a lot of pain and problem, so that's why we say sorry to him. But at least there is a difference, and Mr. Butler will agree that last time when he was deported, nobody was able to help him. This time they tried to deport him, but he was able to send his message to some of his friends, and they intervened, and finally he was allowed. And yesterday, I am told the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Shehbaz Sharif, sent a message of sorry to Mr. Steve Butler through Law Minister, Mr. Azam Nazir Tarar. Last year when I spoke in this conference, I was banned. And I was banned for 9 months. This year, when I am talking to you, I am not banned. It's not because the government is changed. Because the situation is the same. Most of the people who are present here, they may think that I am not banned because the government is changed. This is not the case. Last year I was banned. This year there are some other people who are banned. Last year when I was banned, some of my friends in media, they were justifying the ban, and they were abusing me, accusing me. They were declaring me traitor, and they were saying it's very good that Hamid Mir is banned in Pakistan because he is anti-Pakistan. No, those journalist colleagues who were supporting a ban on me last year, now they are banned. And I condemn a ban on Arshad Sharif, I condemn a ban on Imran Riaz, I condemn a ban on Sabir Shakir. I also condemn the fake cases of treason and sedition registered against all of them. Because last year, I was facing, Asma Shirazi was facing sedition cases. This year, they are facing. So the government is changed, but the media is still under pressure. The subject of this session is the media under siege in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. So I can give you an example, a living example, and the example is sitting with you in this hall. And when I will mention his name, you will come to know that yes, you are right, media is under siege. That gentleman can come to this conference, he can address from this podium, but he cannot appear on any TV channel in Pakistan. And his name is Manzoor Pashtun, who is sitting here. So I am very thankful to the management of Asma Jahangir conference, the organizers, that they have invited people to speak in this conference who cannot come on Pakistani media. और ये जो मैंने आपसे बात की है, ये दरअसल मैंने बात इसलिए की है कि वो हुक्मरान जो दावा करते हैं कि वो इमरान खान के दौर में मीडिया पर बड़ी पाबंदी थी, इमरान खान के दौर में पाकिस्तान जो है उसको बड़े मसाइल का सामना था, अब तो मीडिया आज़ाद हो गया है, तो बताएं कि मंजूर पश्तीन जो है वो मेरे प्रोग्राम में क्यों नहीं आ सकता? मैंने कई दफ़ा कहा कि मैं इसको बुलाना चाहता हूँ, नहीं बुलाते. इस तरह और भी कुछ लोग हैं. So when I was banned last year, the World Press Freedom Index declared Pakistan on 145th number. Pakistan 145वें नंबर पे था. Now I am not banned, but the position of Pakistan declined, and now Pakistan is on 157. During last 4 years, Pakistan जो है वो World Press Freedom Index पे 18 पॉइंट नीचे आया है। आप देखें कितना नीचे आया पाकिस्तान, 18 पॉइंट नीचे आया है। पाकिस्तान लॉस्ट 18 पॉइंट्स on World Press Freedom Index in last 4 years, and in last 4 years 24 Pakistani journalists, including 2 female journalists, they were assassinated in the line of their duty. और किसी एक भी सहाफ़ी का कातिल नहीं पकड़ा गया, ख्वाह वो पंजाब में था या सिंध में था या बलूचिस्तान में था या खैबर पख्तूनख्वा में था या किसी और जगह पे था। और आप देखें कि पिछले साल मैं इमरान खान की हुकूमत पे तनकीद कर रहा था और आज मैं शहबाज शरीफ साहब की हुकूमत जो है उसका शुक्रिया तो अदा कर दिया कि आपने स्टीवन बटलर को सॉरी कह दिया, लेकिन ये तो बताए ना कि मंजूर पश्तीन क्यों नहीं टीवी चैनल पे आ सकता। और आप जब वो सहाफ़ी जिन पर आपकी हुकूमत के दौर में बगावत के मुकदमे दर्ज हुए और उन पर पाबंदी लगाई गई और साबिर शाकिर और अरशद शरीफ को पाकिस्तान छोड़ने पर मजबूर कर दिया गया, तो वो क्यों पाकिस्तान छोड़ने पे मजबूर हुए, इसका कोई जवाब क्यों नहीं देता। मरियम औरंगजेब साहबा जो हमारी इंफॉर्मेशन मिनिस्टर हैं, वो कहती हैं इमरान रियाज तो जर्नलिस्ट ही नहीं है। आपको सबको पता है कि इमरान रियाज जो है वो मेरा कितना दुश्मन है, मुझ पर कितनी तनकीद करता है, लेकिन मैं ये नहीं कहूँगा कि मरियम औरंगजेब उसको अगर कह रही हैं कि वो जर्नलिस्ट नहीं है तो वो सही कह रही हैं। ये बात बिल्कुल गलत है, क्योंकि जर्नलिस्ट जो है उसको कोई भी व्यू हो सकता है, लेकिन चलें आप कहती हैं वो पॉलिटिकल वर्कर है, तो पॉलिटिकल वर्कर पर भी पाबंदी लगाना ये कहाँ की जमहूरियत है, ये कहाँ की आज़ादी सहाफ़त है। तो लिहाजा इस वक्त पाकिस्तान में सिर्फ हुकूमत तब्दील हुई है, हालात तब्दील नहीं हुए। पाकिस्तान का मीडिया इमरान खान के दौर में भी गैर एलानिया सेंसरशिप का शिकार था, पाकिस्तान का मीडिया शहबाज शरीफ के दौर में भी गैर एलानिया सेंसरशिप का शिकार है, और इस पर आप सबको आवाज़ बुलंद करनी चाहिए, क्योंकि मैं बार बार कह रहा हूं सिर्फ हुकूमत तब्दील हुई है, मीडिया के हालात तब्दील नहीं हुए, ये पार्लियामेंट के हालात भी तब्दील नहीं हुए। ये देखें, ये कामरान मुर्तज़ा साहब ये सेनेट के मेंबर हैं, ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट बार एसोसिएशन के साबिक सदर हैं, इन्होंने और आज़म नज़ीर तारड़ साहब ने मिलकर एक कोशिश की और पार्लियामेंट की जो कमेटी है फॉर इन्फोर्स डिस्पीरियंसेस, जो लापता अफराद पे कमेटी है, उसके मुज़ाकरात करवाए जो इन्होंने कोयटा में धरना दिया हुआ था, और वो धरना ख़त्म कराया। और उन बेचारों ने सिर्फ इनको 50 लोगों की एक लिस्ट दी कि इन लोगों को आप रहा भी ना करें, इनको अदालत में भी पेश ना करें, बस सिर्फ ये वादा कर लें कि इनको आपने फेक एनकाउंटर में मारना नहीं है। तो इन्होंने वो लिस्ट उनसे ली और उन मजलूम लोगों ने अपना धरना कोयटा में ख़त्म कर दिया। उसके बाद आप जानते हैं क्या हुआ, इनके मुंह पे जोर का थप्पड़ पड़ा है। ये सारे जो वजीर है ना हमारे इस हुकूमत के, उस लिस्ट में जो एक मासूम सा शायर था, एक पोएट, अब पोएट, उसको निकाल कर मार के उसकी लाश फेंक दी। ये उन्होंने, वो कहते हैं जी हमने दहशतगर्द मारा। आपने दहशतगर्द नहीं मारा, आपने आज़म नज़ीर तारड़ और राना सनाउल्लाह और इन सब लोग जो पार्लियामानी कमेटी में, इनके मुंह पे आपने जोर का थप्पड़ मारा है। और आपको शर्म आनी चाहिए ये थप्पड़ मार के कि आप कहते हैं ये जो शायर था ये दहशतगर्द था। दहशतगर्द वो है जो पाकिस्तान का आइन तोड़ता है। चले मान लिया कि वो दहशतगर्द था, तो फिर आप में और दहशतगर्द में फर्क क्या है? दहशतगर्द भी पाकिस्तान का कानून तोड़ता है, आप भी पाकिस्तान का कानून तोड़ते हैं। ये बात हम पाकिस्तान के मीडिया पे नहीं कह सकते। जब ये बात मंजूर पश्तीन कहता है तो कहते हैं ये भी दहशतगर्द है। तो अगर ये दहशतगर्द है तो फिर आप और मैं, हम सारे ही दहशतगर्द हैं। देखें फर्क क्या है कि एक तरफ हमारी हुकूमत जो है उसकी जो तर्जुमान है इंफॉर्मेशन मिनिस्टर साहिबा, वो उन सहाफ़ियों को सहाफ़ी मानने के लिए तैयार नहीं है जिन पर आजकल पाबंदी है। तो दूसरी तरफ जो इमरान खान साहब हैं वो कहते हैं वो सलीम साफ़ी जो है वो सलीम साफ़ी नहीं, वो सलीम लफाफी है। और गरीदा फारूकी साहिबा, उनके बारे में कितनी काबिल एतराज़ ज़ुबान इस्तेमाल की। दोनों में कोई फ़र्क नहीं है। ये जो इस वक्त हुक्मरान इत्तेहाद है, आप देखें ये भी वही काम कर रहे हैं जो पहले इमरान खान कर रहा था। तो इसलिए आसमा जहांगीर कॉन्फ्रेंस जो है, इसके प्लेटफॉर्म से हम ये मुतालबा करते हैं कि वो पॉलिसियाँ जिनकी वजह से पाकिस्तान का मीडिया जो है वो वर्ल्ड प्रेस फ्रीडम इंडेक्स पे मुसलसल नीचे आ रहा था, आप उन पॉलिसियों को ख़त्म करें। ये मुतालबा हम इसलिए कर रहे हैं कि आप इन पॉलिसियों को आगे बढ़ा रहे हैं और आपको इसमें कोई ना नदामत है ना शर्म है, बल्कि आप कहते हैं कि हमारे मुल्क में तो पाकिस्तान का मीडिया आज़ाद हो गया है, इमरान खान के दौर में मीडिया आज़ाद नहीं था। एक और बात मैं आपको कहना चाहता हूं कि ये जो सलीम साफ़ी और गरीदा फ़रूकी के बारे में बात की जाती है या और जो हमारे साफ़ी हैं उनके बारे में बात की जाती है ना, तो ये सिर्फ गैर रियासती अनासर बात नहीं करते। एक सोची समझी साजिश के तहत फेक न्यूज़ को पाकिस्तान के मीडिया की आज़ादी छीनने के लिए एक वेपन के तौर पे इस्तेमाल किया जा रहा है। सम स्टेट इंस्टीट्यूशंस आर यूजिंग फेक न्यूज़ to subvert the media freedom in Pakistan. They are spreading disinformation against different journalists and media organizations. जिस तरह इमरान खान साहब कहते हैं ना कि वो फलां बंदा जो है वो पैसे लेके फलां टीवी चैनल ने मेरे खिलाफ साजिश की, इसी तरह कुछ रियासती इदारों के लोग जो हैं वो भी यही बात करते हैं। वो कहते हैं जी आप सारे टैक्स चोर हैं, तो अगर हम सारे टैक्स चोर हैं तो टैक्स चोरी में हमें अंदर कर दो भाई, क्यों नहीं करते आप अंदर। तो इसलिए मैं ये कहना चाहूँगा कि अगर कोई ये समझता है कि पाकिस्तान के हालात बेहतर हो रहे हैं वो एमको की जन्नत में रहता है, बल्कि मैं आज आपको एक और बात कहना चाहता हूँ, बड़ी जिम्मेदारी के साथ बात कर रहा हूँ कि अगर कोई ये समझता है कि पाकिस्तान के हालात जो हैं वो बेहतरी की तरफ जा रहे हैं और अब दुनिया जो है उसके हालात भी बदल गए हैं और अब तो पाकिस्तान में मार्शल लॉ नहीं लग सकता। भाई अभी 24 घंटे पहले मैंने एक जगह पे मार्शल लॉ की बात बार बार सुनी है, सिर्फ 24 घंटे पहले। और अगर मैं समझता हूं कि अगर आपने पाकिस्तान में दोबारा ऐसे हालात पैदा किए सियासी जमातों ने या किसी और ने और मार्शल लॉ लग गया तो इससे पाकिस्तान को नुकसान होगा। मार्शल लॉ ने हमेशा पाकिस्तान को नुकसान पहुंचाया है। पाकिस्तान जब टूटा तो मार्शल लॉ था। आप कहते हैं कि जो ईस्ट पाकिस्तान में आपकी डिफीट थी, मिलिट्री डिफीट नहीं थी, पॉलिटिकल डिफीट थी। चले मान लेते हैं पॉलिटिकल डिफीट थी। पॉलिटिकल डिफीट इसलिए थी कि शेख मुजीबुर रहमान के खिलाफ पाकिस्तान आर्मी का एक फौजी जनरल गुलाम उमर जो है उसने एक सेल बनाया हुआ था और वो शेख मुजीबुर रहमान के सियासी मुखालफिन में पैसे बांटता था। जैसे बाद में 88 में भी IGI बनाई गई और पैसे बांटे गए और उसके बाद भी पैसे बांटे गए, तो 1970 के इलेक्शन में ये काम शुरू हुआ, पॉलिटिकल इंटरवेंशन, और अभी तक ये सिलसिला चल रहा है। तो शुक्र है कि 1970 में पाकिस्तान का मीडिया आज़ाद नहीं था, वरना आज आपने कहना था कि वो पाकिस्तान जो है वो इंडिया ने नहीं तोड़ा था, वो पाकिस्तान के मीडिया ने तोड़ दिया था, आपने ये कहना था। और आखिर में मैं ये कहूँगा कि इस वक्त पाकिस्तान में कुछ ड्रैकोनियन लॉ हैं। अनफॉर्चुनेटली these draconian laws were not imposed on us by any military dictator. These draconian laws were imposed on us by democratic governments. जैसा कि 2016 में जो मुस्लिम लीग नून की हुकूमत थी उसने पीका का कानून हम पे इम्पोज किया और वो पीका का कानून आज उन पे इस्तेमाल किया जा रहा है। इसी तरह ये जो पिछली इमरान खान की हुकूमत थी इसने पीका ऑर्डिनेंस जारी किया और आज जब FIA किसी सहाफ़ी को और सियासतदान को गिरफ्तार करती है तो उस पर वही पीका कानून की सेक्शन 20 लगाती है। तो ये सारे कानून जो है ये ख़त्म होनी चाहिए, इनके खिलाफ यहाँ पे एक करारदाद मंजूर होनी चाहिए और उस करारदाद में ये मुतालबा किया जाना चाहिए कि जो पाकिस्तान की इलेक्टेड पार्लियामेंट है, ये पार्लियामेंट पाकिस्तान के आइन और कानून के तहफ़्फ़ुज़ के लिए कोई किरदार अदा करे, सिर्फ नौकरी ना करे, हाथ बांध के खड़ी है और जी सर किए जा रही है। और जुडिशरी भी जो है उसको भी खड़ा होने की ज़रूरत है। इतनी डिवाइडेड जुडिशरी पाकिस्तान की हिस्ट्री में हमने कभी नहीं देखी। तो जब पार्लियामेंट मजबूत नहीं होगी, जुडिशरी डिवाइडेड होगी, तो मीडिया की फ्रीडम को तहफ़्फ़ुज़ कहाँ से मिलेगा। तो उस तहफ़्फ़ुज़ के लिए आप सबको, हम सबको मिल के इकट्ठे एक जदोजहद करनी है। और इस बात पे ख़त्म करूँगा हबीब जालिब के शेर पे कि झूठे मुकद्दमात हैं, फर्जी शहादतें, हम फिर भी लिख रहे हैं जनू की हकायतें।
Thank you, Mir Saab, for a very rousing speech. Stephen Butler, you have quite the hard act to follow. He already is known to all of us thanks to the fact that he was banned from the country last year. That's the surefire way of getting fame in Pakistan. But he made it this year. He is now the journalist and a senior program consultant committee to protect journalists.
Thank you, Arifa, and Thank you, Hamid, for those very nice words. I want to thank the staff of the Asma Jahangir Foundation for the incredible work that they did to make it possible for me to come here. And I'd also like to thank the government of Pakistan for opening the door. I should say a few words about what happened last Thursday when I arrived, because there has been some misreporting about what happened, and I'd like to set the record straight. I believe what happened was a lack of communication inside the Pakistani government. I was given a visa and a welcome from the Interior Ministry, but the FIA, which controls the immigration, did not get word that I was to be allowed into the country, and so they stopped. And they stopped because they were not allowed to let me enter as long as my name appeared on their computer. But I have to say, I was there for those 8 hours, and they were rather kind to me. I was not interrogated, I was not abused in any way. I was offered food and water and a place to sleep until it was possible for them to get clear instructions about what to do. So I think they were highly professional. Whatever mistake was made, it was not by the people who stopped me. I truly regret what happened in 2019 when I was immediately turned back. And why is that? Of course, it was very inconvenient. But it ended a period of long, open communication between my organization, the Committee to Protect Journalists, and the government of Pakistan. We have for years sent delegations of senior journalists and senior board members to meet with Pakistan's prime ministers and senior officials of all kind, and we tell them what we think. And they listen to us and they tell us what they think. And that was a very healthy process that was unfortunately brought to an end. The Committee to Protect Journalists and Reporters Without Borders, I think globally, we form a network that supports press freedom everywhere. That's our goal, and I think it's an important aspect of the international media scene. It's true that I and my colleagues have said highly critical things about the way that Pakistan treats its journalists. But Pakistan is not unique in that in any way. Take a look at what we say about Iran, about India, about China. You'll find we speak very openly and very critically. But I can say unequivocally, we are not against Pakistan in any way. We are not anti-Pakistan. Neither were we for or against the government of Imran Khan. We are neither for nor against the government of Shehbaz Sharif. We are not against the army. We are not against the intelligence services. We are certainly not against the judiciary. What we are for is the journalists. Our work, we try to promote it so that journalists can work without interference and without fear of retaliation for what they do. But aside from this, we also see what happened to me in 2019 when I was turned back as part of a sign of the times. At roughly the same time, a few months earlier, two colleagues of mine who were visiting Tanzania were detained and interrogated, and their equipment was seized. These are the first two incidents, I think, in the history of CPJ where our representatives have been treated in this sort of hostile manner by authorities. And what we are witnessing is, frankly, we see this as part of a worldwide decline of press freedom that very much includes the United States. I was looking over some statistics. In 2020, in the United States, there are documented 630 assaults of journalists. 630 assaults of journalists in a country where press freedom is considered an absolutely fundamental value. Those assaults were associated with the election campaign and also the Black Lives Matter demonstrations. But still, it's a shocking number. Those numbers of assaults went down last year, but still remained at a rather high level. This year in Mexico, 13 journalists have been killed so far, and there is not even a war there. In Ukraine, 15 journalists have died. In Haiti, 5 journalists have been killed. And the Philippines, 4 journalists have been killed so far this year. If you look at the imprisoned counts, in Iran, just in the past 6 weeks, 41 journalists have been put in jail. 41 journalists. In Myanmar this year is likely to be the #1 jailer of journalists, 51. China it will be right up there, although a few journalists we've been able to document who are associated with the Uyghur journalist and scholar Ilan Tohti have been released. We've been able to get in touch with them. There are a large number of journalists in jail in Vietnam, Turkey, and Egypt. In Afghanistan, the media industry has, I won't say it's completely collapsed, but it's under tremendous pressure, and it's just a faint shadow of what it was before August 15th. And in India, next door, the press is under tremendous pressure. I mean, just look what is happening in Kashmir. It's shameful that these journalists, they go to jail there, the courts ordered bail, and yet they are rearrested on different charges, and so they never get out. So I'm going to surprise many of you by saying that despite all of the difficulties that our friend Hamid Mir just described, which are very, very real, in some ways I feel that Pakistan is a bright spot in this region. Why? Because you look at the journalists, you look at the quality of the journalists, you look at the determination, you look at the bravery, you look at the talent, and there is very much to build on. So this is my hope that Pakistan can use this foundation of high quality journalism and the tradition to rebuild much of what has come under pressure in the last few years. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Just one short announcement before I invite the next speaker. ARY had also been invited to speak at the panel today. They had also kindly accepted, but because of some sports-related issues, I think there's some cricket match going on, so they got rather busy with that and they couldn't make it, but they were invited, especially because, sorry, my knowledge of cricket is abysmal, but I do know that there was something to do with cricket, and that's why, despite the fact that they had accepted the invitation, because they are under fire these days, but they couldn't make it. I will now break the order of speakers a little bit. I think after 2 male speakers, it's important to now have a woman talk about it. So I'd like to invite Malini Subramaniam. She's an independent journalist and the former head International Committee of the Red Cross. She has reported extensively on human rights violations in India. So hopefully, apart from talking about the press and the siege it is under in India, she will also talk about reporting in conflict zones.
Thank you. See, right at the outset, I wish to express my deep gratitude for being invited to this conference. Primarily also because a lot of Indians love to come to Pakistan, and I'm really, really grateful, and I was amazed at the warmth that I came across here from people in the conference, from people on the streets, and they immediately reached out to us saying that, oh, you're from India and most welcome. So thank you so much, and I hope more and more Indians come and more Pakistanis go to India. And I think it's important that we do this exchange of people rather than get caught in cricket politics and politicians themselves who really make it difficult for people's transit and friendship. Of course, Asma Jahangir is somebody whom we have always looked up to. We in India, she's a household name amongst the human rights activists.